This is the Book Legion Podcast, where we review thought-provoking books to give our Legionnaires the knowledge they need to dominate the next level of their life.
Everybody, thanks so much for joining me. My name is Tyzer Evans. This is the Book Legion. If you haven't stopped by before here and you don't know what the Book Legion is all about, it's a podcast / YouTube channel dedicated to me reviewing books so it'll help elevate your life, whether it's your wealth, your spirituality, your health, your finances, your relationships to the next level. Today, what I'm going to be covering is Sadhguru's book, Inner Engineering. This book came out a few years ago. He actually just released a new book called Karma. But this book is all about how do we start to inner engineer ourselves to elevate to the next level. So I'm going to cover who Sadhguru is, a little bit about the book, and whether or not I think you should buy it. So stay tuned. So if you're not familiar with who Sadhguru is, he is what you would be considered to be a mystic from India. He came on the self-help, motivational, self-improvement scene probably about 3 to 4 years ago was the first time I had heard of him. This was back when I was living in Georgia. It was the first time I heard of him. So he really got into yoga, spirituality when he was really, really young, right around 10 years old. He was always one of those kids that pondered life. He talks about being 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and really pondering life, sitting down for hours on end to look at a blade of grass or a leaf or a tree and contemplating what that was about. What is our existence here about? And so as he got older, he got into yoga. Right around that same time, 10, 11, 12, he got heavily into yoga. And for those of us in the Western society, we think of yoga as a exercise practice. Really, yoga at its true form is a meditation practice through the body. It's a very spiritual practice for those of you who've never really looked beyond just the surface part of yoga. And so what Sadh is trying to do is help people elevate their own spirituality by turning inward as opposed to turning outward and always focusing on the 5 external realities or senses that we have that we think construct our world. He wants to start doing the inward work, inner engineering, so to speak, in this book to help elevate the quality of our life mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So I'm going to cover my couple top takeaways and give you I think you should recommend the book, whether I recommend the book or not. So stay tuned. So the first chapter I'm going to cover is No Boundary, No Burden, which starts on page 48. So the book is broke up into 2 parts. The first part talks a little bit about mindset, and then the second part is all about mind, body, energy, and joy are the 4 different sections. So the first part I'm going to talk about is no boundary, no burden. And really what this section is talking about, it's really trying to convey to you what the spiritual process is and what is the purpose of the spiritual purpose. And really this is he talks a lot about having you understand that the only boundaries in life or your only limitations in life are the ones that you placed on yourself through the construct of your 5 sense reality. Where we're unlimited potential, we are unlimited beings. A lot of us, especially in the Western society, don't realize that we have unlimited potential. When you think of someone who has a very deeply spiritual or has generated a lot of wealth, people are often wondering like, how do I do that? Or can I do that? But because people have this tendency based on their life experiences, who they grew up with, how they were talked to as a child, the things that they witnessed people having around them, they start to build their own cage or construct of what is and what is not possible. So he really wants to start to help you break this down to realize that there is no limitation. The only limitation that you're putting yourself is in this invisible cage, so to speak. So I want to read you a quote on page 63 that really stuck out to me. This is the sole purpose of the spiritual process. The life and the work of every spiritual guide across history and across culture has been just this: to point out that the cage door does not exist. Whether you fly or choose to remain in the limitations of the cage, let that be a conscious choice. So he's basically saying that the cage that you place on yourself is the one that you placed on yourself, right? Like no one put you in this cage. No one put you in this box. You've been put in this box by your conditional thinking and limited experiences that you have with your 5 senses. So it's a choice of whether or not you're living a limited life, right? You're choosing not to be happy. You're choosing to be stressed. You're choosing to be sad. You're also choosing to be joyful or happy, right? These are all conscious choices we make. And so the more that you can start to have this type of mastery over your thought and realize that like, I'm a product of all the decisions I've made this far in my life. My choices have gotten me here. My choices in my life are a consequence of my choices. And so the more that I can start to remove the blockage of what is limiting or a limiting belief system or a limiting thought, you realize that you are completely free. And the point of this chapter is really to no boundaries, no burden, right? So if you're not putting limitations on yourself, then you're not burdened by those limitations, which makes your life very free. And so the second part I want to talk about is just really journaling in how important it is to realize, like I have right here on my shoulder, the Trinity. And again, I've got right here Ganesh, and I've got over here Buddha, right? So for me, I kind of believe in all different types of modalities and philosophies of life. I don't think that there's one way of living that's right over another, but the reason why I have the Trinity on my shoulder is because it really relates to part 2, which is being incorporated of mind, body, spirit. And I think that a lot of us sometimes in Western society and different parts of the world, we lose focus. We lose so much of just like on our body, or we do a lot of mind work, but we don't do spirit work. Right? So the more that you can connect these 3 things with having meditation, going to the gym, eating healthy, reading good things, listening to positive podcasts, right? All those things, surrounding yourself with great people who are living life on the next level, that are positive influences, then you start to construct yourself in a way that's well-rounded, and you start to have some type of semblance of balance within your life. But the balance is because you're hitting all the important pillars, where so much of us, maybe you're very deeply spiritual, but you don't go to the gym. So your body in turn becomes sick because you're not taking care of your temple, right? Or maybe you're someone who's obsessed with going to the gym, but you don't meditate. And so you're not in tune with who you really are. You're not listening to that inner voice. So there's a disconnect sometimes with when you have opportunities or need to make a decision. You're not used to listening to hear your heart, your gut. You're used to listening to your mind. So I just wanted to point this out. This isn't like a topic or a section that it was really prevalent, but I really wanted people to pay attention to part 2 and really hone in on all these sections. They're long sections, typically 30, 40 pages, but take notes, really dwell in on this, because a lot of us miss this key fundamental part in life, that everything is all interconnected, right? The better that my mind and my body is, the better that I can connect to the core source of whatever that is, right? The more I'm connected to the core source and my body is healthy and my mind is clear, then the better I can be attuned to looking for my opportunities, my assignments, right? It's oftentimes once you're in alignment, the assignment comes, and people lose sight of that. So I wanted to bring that up as kind of my second talking point, that part 2 is really about finding alignment of these 3, or he talks about 4 core pillars, which the next one I'm going to talk about, which is joy. So the third thing I'm going to talk about, which is interesting because the book is about 260 pages, but joy is its own section. It's only 2 pages long. And why I think this is really important is because he wants to bring it home as a short, like kind of a gut punch in the very last part of the book. So I'm going to read you a quote on page 262. Never before has a generation of people known the comforts and conveniences we have today. And yet we cannot claim to be the most joyful or loving generation in history. And a vast number of people live in the states of constant anxiety and depression. Some are suffering their failure, but ironically, many are suffering the consequences of their success. Some are suffering their limitations, but many are suffering their freedom. What is missing is human consciousness. Everything else is in place, but the human being is not in place. If human beings stop obstructing the path to their own happiness, every other solution is at hand. You cannot transform the world without transforming the individual. And I think that that is the essence of how you get to joy, is by transforming yourself. And that's what this whole book is about. Inner engineering is how do you start to re-transform yourself to live at the next level, to be all-encompassing, and just realize we are spiritual beings having a human experience. There are no limitations. The only limitations you have in your life are the ones you place on yourself. If you're choosing depression, then you're choosing depression. If you're choosing sadness, then you're choosing happiness. On the other side of that choice is joy and happiness and gratefulness that you can choose all the same, right? Everything is a conscious choice or a subconscious choice. So the more you can be conscious of your decisions and what you're choosing to do today, the more that you can truly manifest the type of life that you want to have. So I love Sadhguru. I love the book. I'll post the book in the show notes if you want to swing down and get it. It's about $13. Sadhguru also has a podcast you could tune into. He's got all kinds of YouTube videos. You can find him all over the internet. Listen to some of his talks. A lot of times they're just 10 or 15 minutes, the podcast. They're bite-sized, those little tidbits of wisdom that really just uplift you for an entire day, or at least get your mind working in a way that you maybe haven't thought of before, especially if you're someone who's only listened to one type of spiritual dogma. It's really good to break out of that thought pattern and open your mind to other perspectives of how people live. Now, you don't have to change your identity, but it's always good to have multiple ways of looking at life and the human experience. Especially this guy, yoga's been around for thousands of years. So this guy comes from a deeply spiritual point. He's one of those people that was just put here on earth to give and to serve and to bring more enlightenment that we all very much need. So go pick up the book. Go follow Sadhguru's stuff. His new book out is called Karma. I also put that in the show notes as well if you want to buy both of them. Thanks so much for listening. If you guys haven't done so, please subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel. It would really mean a lot to me. Dropping me a comment, 5-star review, letting me know how much it's impacted you, or different books you want me to cover, or something that you just read that was impactful that maybe other people need to hear about. But thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.